What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Mock Draft Guy YouTube channel. So, continuing my series of 7-round team mock drafts, I already did the Chicago Bears because, as it stands, the Chicago Bears still have the #1 overall pick. So, if you haven't checked that out, please go and check that out right now. We are rolling on to pick number 2, or the second team right now, which is the Houston Texans, who own a multitude of picks in this draft. They have 6 picks inside the first 103 picks and 12 picks overall. So they could really fill out a lot of holes on their roster. I think we're all in agreement that even with a great draft class and a decent free agent class, I don't think the Houston Texans are necessarily close to contending. I still think they would be 1 year off, but this is the real start of the rebuild, in my opinion. At number 2, there's so many different ways that the Houston Texans can go. Who knows? They might even trade up for that one spot just to solidify, getting that quarterback or whatever prospect they covet more than anyone else. Who knows? They could also trade down. They could see who gets taken #1 overall in terms of quarterback. Maybe they don't like the quarterbacks that are left. Maybe they stay and they take the best defensive player left. So there's a multitude of different ways that they can go. But here, starting this draft at pick number 2, I am going to go with Bryce Young. Personally, for me, I think Bryce Young is QB1. I think he's the best all-around playmaker. And even though he does have size issues, 5'11", 190 pounds, I'm willing to overlook that. And I think he's a fantastic playmaker, and he's going to be a great quarterback in the NFL. So I'm going Bryce Young, number 2 overall. At number 12 overall, I'm going to go with Quentin Johnston here. The reason why I'm going to go with Quentin Johnston is I know that maybe they have more pressing needs at number 12. I'm not in love with the edge rushers or the defensive linemen that are left at number 12. I know that's crazy to say, but I don't think any of them are worth being taken at number 12. You get Quentin Johnston here at number 12, who is the consensus wide receiver number 1. You instantly get a franchise quarterback and a wide receiver number 1. And also, Brandon Cooks is more than likely not coming back. He's probably going to be traded. And then you have a really nice young receiving core of Quentin Johnston at wide receiver 1, Nico Collins at wide receiver 2, and then you have John Mechie, God willing, returning, playing in the slot. And that's a lot of dynamic weapons to work with for a young quarterback. So I like Quentin Johnston here at pick number 12. I might go with a little bit of a curveball here. There's a couple of good edge rushers here, but I think we could hold off on that for a while. I like John Michael Schmitz here. The reason why is, first off, in 2021, in 807 snaps, he gave up 0 sacks. That's very impressive at the collegiate level. Not only that, Scott Quisenberry is a free agent, and he's also particularly terrible. I don't like to use PFF as a metric that much, but he had one of the lowest PFF grades I've seen in quite some time. I believe his season grade was like 36 or 37. Absolutely terrible. Give up 7 sacks, a few penalties as well. An immediate position upgrade is key, especially with a new young franchise quarterback as well. I think getting the offensive line sorted should be first and foremost after getting your franchise quarterback. So I'm going to go with John Michael Schmitz here at pick number 33. Then going to pick number 65. I'm looking for an edge rusher here at pick number 65. So I think that, Jonathan Grenard is pretty good. Rasheem Green is pretty good as well. He's also a free agent. I would like to see them bring him back. He had an okay season, 7 quarterback hits, 4 sacks as well. They have Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison still under contract, so I'd like to see them get younger at the position as well. And Zach Harrison is here. I like Zach Harrison a lot. 6'5", 270 pounds, 6.5 sacks, I believe, this past season at Ohio State. I think that he could do some real damage on the edge there, and he's a nice young edge rusher to put into the rotation. He could learn from guys like Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison as well. I think it's a good move for the Houston Texans here in the 3rd round, the first pick of the 3rd round. Then moving on to pick number 73, I think that the linebacker position, I know it's not listed here as a high need, which it's a little puzzling to me. The linebacker position desperately needs an upgrade here at this point. Diane Henley is a baller. Hasn't been getting as much praise as he should. I know he's a little bit on the smaller side. I believe he's 6'1", 225 pounds. You might like to see him, a little bit beefier for an inside linebacker position, but dude is a tackling machine. He's a playmaker. I believe he had 4.5 or 5 sacks as well at Washington State this past year. The last 2 years, over 100 tackles or close to 100 tackles as well. I think he'd be an immediate upgrade over guys like Blake Cashman as well. So Cashman's also a free agent. I wouldn't like to see him come back. I think Henley would be a very, very smart pick here at number 73 to beef up the middle of that defense. So I'm going to go at Henley here. Then coming up to pick number 103, I'm looking defensive line here. The interior of the defensive line of the Houston Texans was really, really poor this past year. Throughout the first 5 weeks of the season, they were giving up an historic amount of rushing yards. I think it was something like they were giving up 190 or close to 200 rushing yards a game, which was absolutely insane. So I think a little bit of beef on the interior is what they need. I like Mike Morris a lot at that position. Mike Morris, a little bit undersized at 6'6", 290 pounds, but we could see that he can establish pressure on the inside. 7 sacks, this past season at Michigan. And it's funny enough because last year he played with Aiden Hutchinson on one side and David Ojabo on the other, and he could only muster a half of a sack. You would think that with 2 NFL caliber, one a defensive rookie of the year candidate, the other one has a very promising future. You'd think he'd be able to get more pressure on the inside, but once those guys were gone, he was really able to generate a lot of pressure on the inside. So I like Mike Morris a lot there. Then moving on to pick number 136, I think it is time to look at the offensive line. Tyler Steen, 6'5", 315. He quickly earned that starting spot in training camp before the season started for Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide. So I'd like to see him continue his development at the NFL level and could possibly be a long-term replacement for Titus Howard. So I like Tyler Steen there. I was going to say Titus Steen there. Moving on to the next pick here, which is pick number 186. So a little bit of a gap. They had 6 picks in the first 103 and then 7 picks in the first 136. So pick number 8 for the Houston Texans is coming way down at pick number 186. And this is where I'm going to look for a little bit of cornerback depth here. I like Darius Rush a lot from South Carolina. This is a guy who has been on the field with J.C. Horn, who was a first-round pick and is one of the best cornerbacks in football right now. And he was also on the opposite side of Cam Smith, who is a very, very promising cornerback and will be drafted in the first round of the 2023 draft. So Darius Rush kind of reminds me of a Kobe Bryant type of player where, he was overshadowed by how good his teammate on the opposite side of the field was. Remember last year at Cincinnati, Sauce Gardner took all the headlines, and then Kobe Bryant, had a very, very good year, got drafted in the 4th round, and is a big part of that Seattle Seahawks secondary. So I think Darius Rush could be like that too. Really good size, 6'2", 200 pounds, has great size to be a boundary corner at the next level. I'd love to see him continue his development further. So I like Darius Rush there at pick number 186. Then we're moving on to 198, and I think that Dameon Pierce had a fantastic rookie season. 939 yards, 4 touchdowns as well. Also, he toted the ball a lot too. 220 carries before he got injured and eventually was out for the rest of the season. That could have been very, very close to 300 carries. Rex Burkhead is a free agent. Also, I wouldn't really consider bringing him back. Royce Freeman, who somehow is still only 27 years old, is also a free agent. I wouldn't consider bringing him back as well. Let's bring in someone else. I like Muhammad Ibrahim a lot. He was a guy that was in consideration, in the top 10 consideration for the Heisman Trophy, had 1,800 rushing yards. They did run him into the ground a little bit, but that's why I think he'd be a perfect complement to someone like Pierce. He's also a similar build to Dameon Pierce too, so he packs a punch as well as Dameon Pierce. So there's no let up there, when Pierce comes off the field and Muhammad Ibrahim comes in. So I would like to see him as a nice complement to Dameon Pierce. Then moving on to pick number 203. And I have Daniel Scott here out of California. Daniel Scott, a nice safety depth here. At this point in the draft, we're really looking for depth or diamonds in the rough that can be long-term pieces with a little bit of development. Daniel Scott is an uber productive safety from Cal. Also 6'2", 215 pounds, really good size for the safety position. 3 interceptions this year, 3 interceptions last year, and 2 picks last year. So the production is there. He's a little bit of a ball hawk. I think he'd be a great pick at this point in the draft for the Houston Texans secondary. Then moving on, I'm going with more defensive line depth here, and I'm going with Jonah Tavai. And the reason why I'm going so far down that right there is I think Jonah Tavai is a very interesting prospect. He is 6'2", 290 pounds. So he doesn't really have the ideal size to be a defensive tackle, but he had 10.5 sacks for San Diego State this past year. So he's kind of like an interesting prototype type of player where at this point in the draft, you should be looking to get someone like that, or, just depth pieces with intrigue. And I think that's exactly what Jonah Tavai is. And then, believe it or not, yes, at pick number 238, I am going with a long snapper. And I'm not even kidding when I say this to you, because Jonathan Weeks is a free agent at the long snapper position. He's also 37 years old. Listen, long snappers are an underrated part of a football team. We don't think about it all the time, but those snaps have to be pretty much perfect all the time. I'm really not kidding when I say this. And I'm going with Alex Ward here. I really think at this point in the draft, you need special teamers. And I think that Alex Ward is the best long snapper here. Obviously, there's only 2, so it could only be one of 2. But I think it's a necessary position to look for. How often do long snappers, go into free agency? I can't remember. I feel like once a team drafts a long snapper, that's it for their career. They're staying there for the entire career. So I'm going to go with Alex Ward here with the last pick. Yeah, it's probably going to be like a D or an F, but I don't even really care. So there you have it. There is my 7-round 2023 Houston Texans mock draft. The Arizona Cardinals 7-round mock draft will be up, I believe, Monday. So this is coming up on Wednesday, January 11th. So I will have a Hendon Hooker player profile ready to go on Friday. And then Monday will be the Arizona Cardinals 7-round mock draft. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And I will see you in the next one.